98 Test crickets for New Zealand. Doully, let's talk cricket, mate. We've got so much to talk about. For a start, Bangladesh, and when you have a pitch that turns like that within a couple of hours, mate, what a minefield.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But I don't mind that. You know what New Zealand produce when we're at home, and they're green ones, and we often wrap the Bangladesh players on the fingers, on the helmets. You know, they go away sort of screaming and crying half the time when they come down to New Zealand because of the hard, fast nature of our surfaces. And we go there, we've just got to be better, and we have not been good enough. And it also, you know, what it does say is that our spinners aren't quite up to the mark all the time because they just don't bowl on enough surfaces like this, whereas theirs are. And I'm not saying we need, you know, pitches in New Zealand that turn from day one, but we've got to have some surfaces across the country that do actually provide spin, so that we learn how to play it better and we actually learn how to bowl it better as well in those types of conditions. And, if we don't start doing that, we'll always have trouble going to the subcontinent. And, you know, India's been a nightmare for us in the last 10, 15 years. And it's proving that way in Bangladesh at the moment. So fair play to them. They've played better than us at the moment, and we look like going down in the second one as well.
Oh, mate, this will be over within 3 days by the look of it. And I totally agree with you. I mean, this is what home court advantage is, isn't it? Look, in the West Indies during the 80s and the 90s, what kind of pitch did you get over there, Simon?
Yep, you got a hard, shiny one. I reckon you could see yourself in it. It was almost like a mirror finish in those surfaces. You turn up to Sabina Park in Jamaica, and they said you could basically see yourself, see your own reflection in the pitch. It was that hard, fast, and shiny, and they just belted the crap out of teams. Yeah. And rightly so. And, as I say, home advantage is home advantage. We play on whatever we want to at home and in test matches, and I have no issue with what Bangladesh are doing, as long as it's not substandard, and I don't think it is. Then you just got to be better at playing spin and bowling spin, and we just haven't quite been up to the mark as yet.
I've started to actually feel quite sorry now for Henry Nicholls, and watching him go out to the wicket yesterday, I was thinking, what's the point taking your bat? I mean, you might as well send me out there. You just go out there with your feet and just try and kick the ball away, Henry, because he just looks as though he doesn't have a clue.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? When you get into that situation, into that sort of rut where you just don't know. You don't know where your next run's coming from. You're not sure how to score your next run, and your head's sort of all fuzzy. It's such a horrible, horrible place to be as any sportsman. And, he's just going through one of those trots at the moment where it's not easy. But, hey, he's not the only one. I think back through that entire World Cup, barring one innings, I think Tom Latham had. I mean, he's had a pretty poor time of it in the last few months, Tom Latham, and you know, he's not the only one. Conway hasn't been that great at times either. So, there's questions to ask around a few, to be honest.
I want to ask you a whole lot of questions about cricket this year, because we've only got a couple of weeks to go before we take some time off, and I know that you do as well. And I was just kind of thinking, okay, well, since we're on Test cricket, let's talk about that. I go back to that Basin Reserve Test against England. For everything that you love about Test cricket, I mean, the best series of the year has got to be the Ashes, and you were over there fortunate enough to be there, to actually see that live. But when you talk about Test cricket and you remember those particular matches, you got to say it's in a healthy place, isn't it? For those of us who love it, I mean.
Yeah, and I think even those that are maybe on the verge or have grown up a little bit more enjoying T20, have enjoyed T20 in the last few years, I think a good test match is still something that grips you to the edge of your sofa. And that's the one thing that, the short ball format, because it comes and goes so quickly and a series is done and forgotten, I think that's one thing that test matches do. And I really got a first-hand experience of what Ashes means to England and what it means to world cricket while I was in England this summer, to be honest, because it grips them. It really does grip them. They live, they eat, they breathe every ball. And when you get a series like that, when you get test matches like you're talking about, the New Zealand-England one at the Basin, that's just so good to watch, Marty. And because it can ebb and flow so much throughout the course of 5 days, 4 days, even 3 days, if that's all it is, that's what draws you in. And you get sucked into that, the ups and downs, the highs and lows of a test match. And I think there's very few sporting contests that can do that to you over such a long period of time. And that's why I And that's why I still love it. I still love watching it. And I think that's why the players still love playing it, for those moments, for those series as well.
Simon, is it as much, it drains you emotionally as much as it does physically, mentally and everything else, but you actually must go through such highs and lows over 5 days. There'll be times where you're thinking, my God, this ball is on a string for me. There'll be times where they're smacking it back over your head. You go, God, I wish I was anywhere else. So I love that as much as anything else because it tests your character, doesn't it?
Well, that's why it's called a test. And it's not just a test of your skill, your ability. It is your mental fortitude, your character, your ability to bounce back from one session to another, from one spell to another, to find an opportunity in a test match. And it might just be one small opportunity where you can maybe garner a little bit of an advantage for your team or for your teammates. And there's so many things that ride on it. And, I think that's the beauty of it. It is a genuine test. And that's why we also see so many players that just don't want to play it because it's tough, it's hard, and they choose the easier options. And the easier options are now short-form cricket. They're T20 cricket. It's 50-over cricket only, or T20 cricket only, or white ball cricket only. Test match cricket is damn hard, to quote a great radio sport of the old days quote. It's damn hard.
It's damn hard, mate.
But that's it. And it is. And it does. It tests everything, every little sinew of your body.
When we first met, 98, 99, and that Indian test at the Basin Reserve, you find a 7 for 65. Did you know where that ball was going every time you bowled it that day? Because it looked like it.
Yeah, most of the day. I think I did. And those are the days you live for it. I sort of, people ask me about that day, and they sort of ask me about it a lot more in India nowadays, obviously because I spend so much time there. But you probably have less than 10 of those days in your career. And I didn't have a hugely long career, but sort of 40-odd one-days and 30-something test matches. So there's enough days of cricket in that. And then you couple in all the first-class cricket as well. I probably had less than 10 great days on the field where you come off and you think, geez, I've had a great day. You have some good days and some mediocre days. You have some average days. But that was just one of those days where everything felt right. Conditions felt right. The surface suited me. The ball was moving. I didn't have to think too much about what I was doing. And you talk to the players that play for a long, long period of time, and at periods you see Kane Williamson bat, and you think, he's just not thinking about it. He's just doing it because he can, because he's in that zone. You watch Kohli, he gets in that zone, and that's just what happens when you have those types of days. So they don't come along very often, and you certainly have to enjoy and make the most of them when you do have those opportunities, I think.
Yeah, I love talking to you about this. 208, they were all out. And Mo Azruddin actually got a century. He was unbeaten that day, but you took the absolute top off. You took 7 out of the first 8, including Sashin. Getting a guy like that, what does that feel like?
Yeah, that's pretty good. That was probably the worst ball of the innings. And that was, I think it was like a half. No, it probably was. I think it was a half volley on leg stump. I think it was a half volley on leg stump, and it was Matthew Bell.
Yeah, Matthew Bell called it, yeah.
Or someone at square leg. Yeah, okay, so I tell you what, it was square leg by the umpire. He's whipped it. He's hit it so well off his legs. And Matthew Bell took a very, very good catch coming at him quite hard at square leg. So it was an awful delivery. The worst one I bowled in the innings probably, and it picked up one of the greatest of all time. But yeah, Azza played so well in those conditions. He was brilliant because it was doing plenty. It was seaming about, was swinging. And he played incredibly well. But I was also fortunate, Marty, to play with a team that had great slip fielders, slip catchers. Stephen Fleming, Brian Young, Nathan Astle. Very rarely do I remember in any part of my career those guys dropping a catch off me. It just didn't seem to happen. It was more likely that Perori with the gloves was going to drop it than it was one of the slips, to be honest, because they were so good.
Simon Doull is with us, joins us every week, of course. It's absolutely brilliant. We love all the time that you give us, mate. In terms of the T20 this year, before we get into the One Day World Cup, is it hard for you still to go past the IPL? That is the Champions League of T20, isn't it? Every other tournament, if you ask me, and I do this for a job, I find it hard to even recall or actually remember, but that particular tournament is now such an integral part of the world cricket calendar. Like it or hate it, people, it just is.
Yeah, it is, and it is because the players make it that. We in the media make it that. There is no resource sort of unused. There is no there's no cash spared when it comes to putting that event on. It is second only in television rights now to the NFL as far as a broadcast rights deal is concerned. Now that is saying something when you're second only to the NFL, which the companies pay billions for the NFL rights. So it's second only to that. So when you think about what that does for players, when we see players, I mean, we've just had this amazing 50 over World Cup, and Rachin Ravindra, who I'm sure we'll get onto at some stage in this chat, he's written himself an enormous check by the way he's played in that tournament. He will go for in excess of, I'm going to say 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 million.
Wow.
Comfortably in that auction coming up on the 19th of December. I'll be very surprised if it's not somewhere around that 1.7, 1.8 million US dollars, which will be a contract for a young man that, he set the World Cup alight, I get that, but these are the numbers we're talking about. They are life-changing numbers for young players around the world. They've changed, it's changed the lives of young Indian cricketers. It's changed the lives of international cricketers. So that's why we put it on that pedestal of where it ranks, and I think that's also why the players put it on that pedestal of where it ranks.
Well, why the hell wouldn't you have put him in to bat in the second test? And, I don't buy into all these arguments about what his test averages or whatever. He's just been playing in those conditions on the subcontinent. To build a one-day 100, you have to have some stickability at the crease. You've got to see off some bowlers. You've got to construct an innings and work some partnerships. When you add that plus that plus that, doesn't that actually equal give him a go at test cricket in Bangladesh?
I would have thought so. Look, and you mentioned a player whose place he's probably looking at the moment, and a Henry Nicholls, left-handed batter who can bat in the middle order. Yes, he doesn't have test match experience, but he's played beautifully against spin bowlers in subcontinent conditions. He's untarnished in Bangladesh. He hasn't been there and lost like a lot of these players have. So, I'm all for showing faith, and I think New Zealand have shown a lot of faith in a lot of players over a long period of time. But, after losing the first test, I think he deserved an opportunity. And, why not? He can bowl you some good left-arm spin. He's probably going to do a similar job to what Mitchell Santner has done with the ball anyway. And Santner's test record is not great. I was a little bit surprised that they had him back in the fold. I know he's picked up 3 wickets in the first innings, but I was a little bit surprised that they had him back in the test match fold when you've got the likes of Ravindra there. So, he's a player that probably has to play, I think, in these types of conditions. And in a year or 2, 3 years' time, he probably has to play in all conditions if he's still willing to play test match cricket.
And finally, just the future of the sport. Obviously, Test cricket is, it's trying to struggle to find its place in the calendar. We've talked last week about one-day cricket and where does that fit in, because everything outside the World Cup seems a bit, who really cares? But 2028 when T20 cricket comes to the Olympics. And we know why the Olympics is doing this, Simon, don't we? Look, they did it with tennis because they wanted the big names in tennis there. They did it with golf because they wanted Tiger Woods there and what he could actually bring. Now they're looking at, 1.5 billion or whatever people in the subcontinent and going, let's get that sport there. We know why. But put all of that aside. What's it actually going to do, and is it going to be good for the game overall to be at that particular event?
It depends on what they play and how they play it, Marty. Look, T20 is the likely scenario. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan of a sport being at the Olympics if it's not the pinnacle of your sport.
Same.
I.e. golf, tennis.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that. And it's not the pinnacle of cricket. The Olympics needed cricket more than cricket needs the Olympics. And they needed cricket for that very reason that you're talking about. They want Virat Kohli. They want the eyeballs from, they want 1 billion eyeballs from India to be on the Olympics. They want India v Pakistan because they know that it's one of the most watched sporting events in the world. So that's what they want at the Olympics. Now, I get all those things, but does it mean as much to the players? I don't know whether it will. It'll be a novelty, first and foremost. Now, if they went to a football scenario and said, yep, fine, but we're going to play an under-23 with 2 players allowed over 23. So you still have the ability to play a superstar or 2 in your team, but the rest of it is going to be under 23. So it's developing the game. Then I think maybe it has its place. But to me, it all depends on which way they go about it, what format they choose to play, and what age group they use, if it's full nations. But you're just adding another tournament to an already congested calendar, and you're asking players to go and play, and you're asking them to go and play for no money. I think is one of the things that they're going to find very difficult. You're also needing all of these countries to abide by the WADA laws, which Indian cricket refuse to do at the moment. So Cricket India refuse to do that at the moment. They won't sign the documents. They don't conform to WADA at the moment. So that's going to be something we're going to have to look at as well, particularly from India's point of view.